show.
Welcome to episode 88 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. As of Monday, January 9th, 2023, the Toronto Maple Leafs are still a certified wagon, sitting in third place overall in the NHL standings based on points percentage. They're still trying to catch the Boston Bruins, which is becoming a huge pain in the you-know-what. We're actually going to get into that later in this podcast, and we're also going to talk about the week that was in Leafland. They lost to the Seattle Kraken, but followed that up with 2 victories over the Red Wings and Flyers. So we are going to give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that went down with the Leafs. And then we're also going to talk about Connor Bedard and where he might land and which team might actually consider trading some of their best players and draft picks for him. So I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, thank you for having me. Happy to be sitting here recording a pod. Episode 88 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast. As you mentioned, big one, 88. There's 2 good ones here, so I may have to share it. The first one, a player who came to the Toronto Maple Leafs far later than he should have. The Big E, Eric Lindros. He had big dreams of playing for Toronto. He tried his best to force his way to Toronto, but we didn't happen. And if I remember correctly, who were the players we wouldn't trade? I think it was like Berezin and Antropov or something that we refused to trade for the best player in the NHL. And the newer 88, William Nylander, who originally wore 29, moved up to 88. And remember that big like kind of controversy when Nylander switched to 88? People are like, oh, like the disrespect to Eric Lindros. Lindros played like 60 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Settle down.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We weren't even honored. People forget that before we didn't retire numbers, we only honored them. So Daryl Sittler's 27 was worn by like John Kordick and Shane Corson and these plugs. And then, Willie decides to wear a number of a guy who played 60 games with the Leafs, and people get their fucking panties in a knot. But fun stuff always in Toronto.
And quick Eric Lindros story. I saw him at a charity event once. This is back in 2012.
Okay.
Like during the last lockout. He is like the biggest guy I've ever seen. I didn't see him on skates. Like I saw him in the hallway, near the dressing room area. This is at the Mattamy Athletic Center at Ryerson. They were having a charity event there. He is fucking huge.
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot even imagine how it is to deal with this guy flying down the ice at full speed, who's like 6'5", like 250 pounds, and skates like that. That must have been the most horrifying experience for anyone who played in the NHL when he was around.
Yeah, I can touch on that. So I was a little kid. I was I like 9 or 10 when we first got the Sens, and people from Ottawa remember when at the time it was called Palladium. When the Palladium was being built, the Sens were playing at the Ottawa Civic Center, where the 67s played. It's like a 10,000 person arena. So you had NHL hockey in this little arena. Like it was amazing to go anyway. And someone gave my mom tickets against the glass to see Philadelphia. And I remember going there, and the seats were on the glass, literally sharing the glass with the Flyers penalty box. And Lindros got a penalty. And like I said, I was a little kid, and he's pretty well sitting next to me. And I thought, I couldn't get over how big he was, just like the size of his like shoulders and arms and his height and size. Eric was something, man. He's a guy that you always hear that question of like, okay, who are guys from the past who would, do better in today's NHL or could hang in today's NHL? And I find quite often the names you hear are the skaters. Like you'll hear like, oh, Bure would have been amazing and Fedorov would have been amazing, which is true. 100%. I totally agree. But I think sometimes we don't acknowledge Lindros as someone with like that size, that speed, that skill, soft hands. He would have been unstoppable.
Oh, he would have crushed it in today's NHL.
Yeah. You can't clutch and the whole clutching and grabbing thing. You can't do that now. Oh my God, he'd be a force out there.
Yeah, he's the type of player who would have dominated in any era of hockey.
That's right. You know what? That's probably like if someone said which player in NHL history would have dominated in any era. If someone said Lindros, I'd be like, yeah, it's a good answer. Is what I would say.
Just an absolute force of nature. But I love those two shout outs, man. The Big E and William Nylander. Two Leafs legends, even though one of them played less than 100 games for the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, Lepore, let's get right into this, man. So since our last podcast, the Leafs lost 5-1 to the Seattle Kraken.
Gross.
That was an ugly, ugly game. But followed that up with a 4-1 victory over the Red Wings and then a 6-2 win over the Flyers.
Yes.
And interesting stat, Lepore. The Leafs are now 5-0-1 on the second half of back-to-backs this season.
I saw that. Yeah, they mentioned that yesterday. They're
crushing it on back-to-backs. The second half of their back-to-back was against Philly on Sunday night after they beat the Red Wings in Toronto on Saturday night. So just your thoughts on the week that was. You can touch on any game you want, whether it's the Kraken, Red Wings, or Flyers game. What did you think of this team over the past week?
I will admit, Bruno, the Seattle game scared me because I consider myself a pretty even keel Toronto Maple Leafs fan, if that exists. Like, I'm not that guy that panics every time they've lost 2 in a row, or maybe they go a stretch where they don't look that good. Because I always have the saying that, well, if you look at other teams around the league, they have bad stretches. Like Tampa got pumped 5-1 the other night. It happens, right? But when it happens in Toronto, it's a nightmare. So I do my best to try to forbid my brain to go that route. But when we lost to Seattle, I was worried. I'm like, this team has lost 3 out of 4. One of those losses was to the Arizona Coyotes. The goaltending was fucking plummeting in terms of performances, like bad performances. And that Seattle one was just another slap in the face of the question marks we have there. And it was a home game. All that. It was just bad. Like, not that I thought, okay, the Leafs are going to go in this like spiral now, but kind of that thing of like, okay, where exactly are we as a team? Like, I was scared. And from what I saw from the Red Wings game and the Flyers game last night, that I think the Leafs kind of drifted away from during that stretch of losing 3 out of 4. It seemed like, you don't want to call it like the all-out defensive play, but how I'll describe it is more so low event play. Like, you could see they were just trying to be like methodical, go through the process, take advantage of their opportunities, keep the opposition to the outside. Like, Detroit got that one goal. It was coming out of the penalty box for a breakaway. I mean, that is what it is. It happens. I mean, maybe you can say Hall should have been aware of that guy coming out. Maybe you blame Samsonov for not doing that slapstick on the ice thing that goalies sometimes do. So there was that. And then against Philly, I mean, like, that was just a dominant performance. I mean, the 2 goals that they scored were shit. That Marner giveaway, which was like incredibly weird for him. I was like shocked when I saw that. I had to rewind it and watch it again. And then the one they got, I think it was Kerfoot, he couldn't get it out or something. So like, the 2 goals they gave up were bad, but you could still tell like they look solid. The games were never really in doubt. And then on top of that, in both games, the goalies played well. Sammy played his best game in a while against Detroit. Murray looked pretty good last night against Philadelphia. And again, these aren't the strongest opponents, but you win 4-1 and was it 6-2 it finished. So, I mean, what more do you want? So, not that I'm like full steam ahead right now as far as like a turnaround compared to those earlier 4 games, but it's nice to see the team bounce back and look like the team we think they're going to look like.
Yeah, because things have been a little shaky recently. And I'll tell you guys a goaltending stat that's been floating around on Twitter. You may have seen it. I had to go double check this myself, but
oh no.
Since December 15th, the span of 11 games. So this actually includes the games against Philadelphia and Detroit. The Leafs sit 30th in the NHL in 5-on-5 save percentage. And that reminds me of last season. Yeah. Because I've said it 500 times on this podcast. They were 27th in the league in 5-on-5 save percentage and still managed to finish with a franchise record 115 points. And right now, they're on pace to finish with 114 points. Like, where they are right now in terms of the amount of goals they scored, goals against, the goaltending, like, a lot of things are similar to last season, but the two, glaring things that stand out. The Leafs have been way better defensively, and the goaltending has been much better than last season. But over the last 3 to 4 weeks, the goaltending has kind of regressed. So as you said, Lepore, I think the most positive thing from those last 2 games against Detroit and Philly was seeing Samsonov and Murray kind of getting their games back. And I know it's against 2 bad teams. I don't want to call Detroit a bad team because they've been pretty solid. And we know that they're still kind of on the upswing with a lot of their young players. Philly's a disaster. That team sucks. But it's still good to see your goalies bounce back and play well. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. So that was the biggest takeaway for me. I like that the team is continuing to score because we knew the first 20, 30 games of the season, this team was having a little bit of trouble scoring at 5-on-5. Just their goal total in general was kind of lower than it has been in the Matthews and Marner era. But those things have kind of now regressed to the mean, and the defense is still been really solid across the board. There's really not many things that you could nitpick with this hockey team right now. To be on pace for 114 points, 3rd best record in the NHL. Things are looking good right now for our Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say, like, what more do you want? But unless what you want is what the Boston Bruins are doing, I mean, a team on pace for 114 points. Yeah, like, we'll take it. And like, as much as I said, like, yeah, I'm like kind of semi worried about this team after that stretch. When you do look at those numbers of where they were compared to last year, it sets you straight because you're like, okay, again, it's a long season. There's ups and downs, peaks and valleys, as they say. So to get the wins, I mean, it was good. Again, still very fearful that what we're seeing from the goaltending is from the more recent goaltendings, that this is the reality we're dealing with these 2 goalies, as opposed to like just a pendulum swing, which we kind of expected. So that's what I'll really be keeping my eye on. But like, I'll say it, man. People can call me a cocky Leafs fan or a homer or whatever. Minus the goaltending, I have no real worries with this team. Like, just when I watch them and they're dialed in, which is more often than not now, as much as people hate to admit that, they look good. They look good all around. They're good at shutting down a game. Games, even when games are tied, like, it just feels like they're going to win. And like I said, the goaltending is a question mark for sure. But even as far as the D goes, there's been an ongoing debate on Twitter as to whether the Leafs should add to the defensive group. And a lot of people are saying no, like, look how good their D is. It was up to me. Like, I still would like to add something. I mean, if you can make it better, why wouldn't you? Because I mean, there's that old saying that you have to be too good to win a Stanley Cup. But as far as everything's going, minus the goaltending, I'm okay. So I got 41 more games to be convinced one way or the other. If these 2 guys can do it.
They're just a well-oiled machine right now. And you've said it, Lepore, like, defensively, I think they've been really, really good. And I'll just go over some more numbers. You guys know I love that. Right now, the Leafs are 3rd in the NHL in goals against per game. But then even if you want to look at 5-on-5 goals against, okay, so 5-on-5 goals against per 60 minutes, the Leafs are 3rd in the NHL, allowing less than 2 5-on-5 goals per 60 minutes. The only teams that have been better are Boston and Carolina. And then even if you want to look at expected goals against per 60 minutes, the Leafs are 6th in the NHL. And that's the biggest thing. So it doesn't really matter who's in net on a nightly basis. Sure, if Samsonov or Murray have a stinker, like we saw against Seattle, like we saw against Arizona, like we saw in a couple other games over the last 3 to 4 weeks, it doesn't matter how good you are defensively, you're just going to lose. Right. If your goalie's letting in 4 or 5 goals, and 3 of which, they should probably have. But for the most part, night in and night out, it's like you said, there's really nothing to be worried about. Like, there's no egregious giveaways. There's no big defensive breakdowns. Like, this team is just a well-oiled machine right now. And as you mentioned, Lepore, the biggest thing to look at over the next 41 games is going to be the goaltending and how it holds up. Because I think that essentially is going to make or break this team come playoff time. If the goaltending can be average, this team is going to cruise into the I mean, they're going to cruise into the playoffs regardless. But if the goaltending can be, just above league average in the playoffs, this team is going to do some big time damage.
Yeah. Come on.
Anyway.
please.
I know. If people think like, oh, you guys are getting sucked in again. You're
Probably
full of hope and excitement. And then the same thing is going to happen in the first round of the playoffs. We'll deal with that when the time comes.
As I always say, we chose the title of this podcast for a reason. So
we are gluttons for punishment. All right. Just like the rest of Leafs Nation. It's time for a quick break to wish you a happy new year from our friends over at MANSCAPED. The ball has officially dropped, but that doesn't mean you have to drop the ball on your balls in 2023.
Oh.
The leaders in below the waist grooming have you covered for your much needed resolution of bringing sexy back. Join the 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use the promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Lepore, Manscaped simply does not miss.
You know what, Bruno? I see Manscaped as kind of like one of those stores where you go in there and whatever you want, whatever you need, they got it. You want something to clean your balls? It's there. Something to clean your nose and ears? It's there. You want a shampoo and conditioner? You want a body wash? It's there. They got the body scrubs, the body spray, the underwear. Manscaped is A+ all around. Like I said, whatever you want, they got it. Head to manscaped.com, GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
If you're a man and you want to take your game to the next level in 2023, I promise you want Manscaped products. As Lepore said, they have everything you could possibly want to bring your game to the next level. So do the right thing in 2023 to all the men out there. You get 20% off and free shipping using our promo code GFP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using the promo code GFP20. Your thoughts on Marner being the lone All-Star selection for the Leafs?
You know, it's kind of funny when things are going really well, you don't notice certain things or put as much emphasis on certain things. Because when we had this conversation last week about potential all-stars for the Leafs, and may have more than one based on the vote, the two names that immediately came to mind for me were Nylander because of his goal pace and Matthews because he's Austin Matthews. He's like a star. He's a star of the league. He was on the cover of the EA Sports game twice, for crying out loud. So not that like I didn't consider Marner, but when I saw that he was the one announced, I did kind of like okay. And then I'm like, wait a second, he had that point streak. So again, not that that's like, I don't want to say anything makes you a slam dunk to be an all-star. I mean, I guess certain things do if you're the leading goal scorer in the league or top point getter, but a historic point stretch or a historic game point streak is up there. I mean, at the end of the day. So I was, for the first like half second of him being announced, I was shocked. Then it kind of sunk in like, no, wait a minute. That's totally justified. So I'm happy for Mitch. What do you think, Bruno?
Yeah, I think most Leaf fans honestly had the same reaction because I think a lot of people were anticipating that it was going to be Matthews or Nylander getting the nod. But then, as you said, you think about the point streak and you're like, oh my God, this guy just had a 23-game point streak that ended like 2 weeks ago. Like, yeah, of course he's an all-star because that was one of the biggest stories in hockey. And Marner's had a great season. And even if you look at the Leafs, scoring leaderboard right now, Marner once again leads the team in scoring. Yeah. It's amazing to me how, we view Austin Matthews in this superstar light and he's one of the faces of the league. And there's Mitch Marner, 23-game point streak this season, leading the team in scoring again, which he's done 3 times in his career. He's got 49 points in 41 games. Matthews right behind him with 47 points and Nylander with 45 points, although Nylander still leads the team in goals. And I think it's also like, it's almost, this happens in all sports where you just kind of get like bored of the narrative and like the same players. And I think that's what got a lot of people excited about Nylander. Yeah. He's having this big breakout season. He's never made the All-Star game. Marner and Matthews have been there multiple times. And I think that was also kind of contributing to that, how everyone just kind of felt like it was Nylander's time. And who knows, maybe Nylander's going to get in through the fan vote. But no matter who you picked of those 3 guys, you couldn't go wrong because I think they all deserve to be there.
Yeah, 100%. But good for Mitch, man. Like, I've heard about the whole Marner thing. And the whole Marner thing with like, he's always kind of been the number 2. Like the story I heard was, so here's this kid growing up in the GTA, playing in the HL, and the conversation was always Connor McDavid, then Mitch Marner, right? And that's not like an insult to Mitch Marner. So like that's how it was talked about. Like there's this kid and then there's another kid, was kind of how it was, the verbiage was used, how the verbiage was used. And then I mean he gets to the NHL, and I'll even say even like before the draft, so he falls behind McDavid, behind Eichel. People forget Strome. The big debate was like Strome or Marner, or like who should go first. Like Arizona picked Strome. Thank you, by the way. He ends up at 4th. And then he comes in the NHL and he's with this cast of characters that are great players. And I'm not going to say he's in the shadow of Matthews, but there's a guy across the way doing crazy stuff. So maybe, or I will say, it's not maybe, he does not get the attention that he would get had he played for another team. So it's nice to see that he got the All-Star nod, that like he pulled off that point streak. He got the attention he deserves as a star in this league. And to get that All-Star nod is like, it's a stamp. It cements it that like, yeah, like Mitch is here and he's an elite player. And not that I think anyone questioned that, but just to kind of remove him from the whole, like, maybe he's in shadows in Toronto.
And people forget in his rookie season, he was in Babcock's doghouse at one point. He had him on the 4th line. He wasn't getting a lot of minutes, and he still finished his rookie season, I believe, with like 60-something points.
Fucking Babcock,
just
man.
Absurd. So
somebody brought up recently, they're like, and they've been playing together in recent games, but why did it take us so long to put Matthews and Marner together?
Yeah, it literally took like 5 years.
Yeah, like what? No one thought about putting one of the best passers and one of the best shooters on the same line. Like, talk about trying to galaxy brain it, right? Just
absolutely horrible. Embarrassing, man. And I know that right now, Matthews and Nylander are looking good together, and Keefe has, separated those guys when they were playing together for the first 20-something games of the season. But it's like, come on, it really took us 5 years to figure out that those two would be absolute magic together. Like they come together, their first full 82 game season, and Matthews scores 60 goals.
Yeah.
Get it together, man. Thank God for Sheldon Keefe, who I always sing the praises of Sheldon Keefe. That guy does not get enough respect. I still think he should be right up there for the Jack Adams, and he's not going to win it because people are stupid, but it is what it is. Yeah. Anyway. All right, Lepore. The Boston Bruins.
The Boston Bruins, Anthony Bruno.
We talked about this on the last podcast, and there's still a lot of people commenting on that video.
Mm-hmm.
The Boston Bruins are on a pace right now that we haven't seen ever. Like, they are literally on pace to have the greatest season in NHL history. They are 32-4-4 through 40 games. On pace for 139 points. I'm looking right now at the greatest regular seasons in NHL history based on points percentage, because throughout history, it wasn't always an 82-game season. At one point, it was 78, 80 games, 82 games. So right now, the Montreal Canadiens hold the record. The 1976-77 Montreal Canadiens hold the record for the best points percentage ever at 825. They went 68-12. The 77-78 Canadiens, second on that list. The only team like from the modern era, well, there's a couple teams. The 95-96 Red Wings are third on the list. And then the Tampa Bay Lightning from 2018-2019, the team that got swept by Columbus in the first round. They're fifth on this list. But again, the Bruins are on pace to smash all these teams. Right now, the Bruins have an 850 points percentage.
Psychotic.
Like, this is unbelievable. Again, I don't think they're going to keep this up because there's a lot of luck involved. Like, obviously, they're a fantastic team. They're great across the board. Regular stats, advanced stats, eye test. You watch that team, they're phenomenal.
Mm.
But you obviously need a little bit of luck to be getting this many wins and playing at this sort of clip. So the question I ask you, Lepore, the Leafs right now, who, like I said, have the third best record in the NHL, are having a fantastic season. They're on pace to finish second in the division because this team isn't losing. Like, is there any chance over the last 41 games for the Leafs that they can possibly catch the Boston Bruins?
No. I hate to be negative, but the Bruins are, as you said, a super elite team. We acknowledge that, yeah, and I think even the biggest Bruins fan would say, like, okay, a lot has to go your way. You can be an amazing team. Like, two things can be true. You can be an amazing team and have a lot go your way in the way of results to put up, and you need something like that to put up a record like this. And I always say, even like personal records, say like what Marner did earlier this year with his point streak. Two things can be true. He's an amazing player, an amazing scorer, and he also had a lot of luck to push it for that long. But what does happen, and specifically in cases like this, is we always talk about how like things adjust. And like, certain teams catch up to others, certain teams drop, like it's an 82 game season. But it's gone to the point now where the Bruins have been on such a tear and are so good that there's not enough time now for the adjustment. Like, you do the quick math, they're on pace for what, like 140 points. So you put it in perspective. So if they go the second half of the season at 100 point pace, they're going to finish with 120 points. And like, what are the Leafs going to get 120 points? And that's if the Bruins have 100 point pace, like a full swing like that, like go from this team to a team that would, like, based on the second half of the season, be like fighting for a playoff spot, like maybe get into a wild card spot. So I just think, no, I think the math isn't there. And I hate to be negative and I hate to be like logical about it, like using equations as to why the Maple Leafs can't catch the Bruins. But I just don't see it. Cause like, I don't see them falling off a cliff. And like, I mean, I don't see the Leafs going fucking undefeated the rest of the way. So I think I think our goal right now is just home ice advantage in the first round to face our friends, the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, you said it, man. If the Bruins play at a 100-point pace over their next 42 games, they're still finishing with somewhere around 120 points.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be somewhere between like 117 and like 122. Yeah. Even if they play at a 100-point pace, which is absurd. So you said it, man. Like, the Leafs just don't have enough time at this point. And it's pretty fucked up, honestly, because they're going to finish in second place in the Atlantic, and they're going to get Tampa again, most likely in the first round. And I don't know how the NHL can continue with this format, because year in and year out, these three teams in the Atlantic division are like three of the top five teams in the league.
Yeah.
And one team is getting shafted every year. Really, it's two teams are getting shafted because two of them are out before the conference finals.
Right.
And it's crazy. Like, even looking at Boston's goal differential, it is crazy. They have a plus 68 goal differential. The next closest team is Dallas at plus 34 and the Leafs at plus 33. So the Bruins are doubling up the next closest team in goal differential.
That's like the stat of the year, legitimate. Like, how like that, if anything shows their dominance, like that shows their dominance. That I didn't notice that. That's psychotic, man.
Like, that is unbelievable. The Dallas Stars, second in the league with a plus 34 goal differential. Leafs, plus 33. And the Bruins are at plus 68. Another stat, Lepore, and we talked about this on the last podcast, they still have not lost at home in regulation this season. Yeah. They are 19-0-3 at TD Garden in regulation this season. Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Pick your stat about the Bruins that you just want to like laugh at, that they have like 4 or 5 historical things going on in the same season. It's unbelievable, and they deserve credit.
And as we're, looking at the standings right now, I mean, we just talked about it. Like, it's pretty much a lock at this point that it's going to be Leafs and Tampa.
Yeah.
Because the Sabres right now are 4th in the Atlantic, but they're 7 points behind Tampa.
Yeah.
So do you really think and again, the Sabres have actually had a nice season. Like, Tage Thompson is emerging as a star player in the league. Rasmus Dahlin is having a great year. Thompson is in the All-Star game. Dahlin could be joining him. The Sabres could have 2 players in the All-Star game. Mm-hmm. And, are they going to be able to make up 7 points on Tampa over the next, 40-plus games?
I think, you know what? Maybe be careful what you wish for, but we hope they do.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. But then, even man, think of how, okay, let's dream. So Buffalo catches Tampa. Tampa hits a skid. We get Buffalo in the first round, and Tampa and Boston are playing in the first round with a 1v wild card. Ooh,
can you imagine?
Leafs fans can dream. Leafs fans can dream. But again, like while we're talking about this, I'm doing like more math in my head. Like I made the point, if they go on a 100-point pace the second half of the season, they're still going to finish with 120 points. If they go 500, they're still going to finish with like 110 points. And then will the Leafs get 110 points? Maybe not. Maybe they get like 106 or something, 108. That's how crazy this first half has been. And to the point about the record, I don't know if anyone's brought it up or if you've seen it anywhere, where those other teams like the Montreals of the 70s and Detroits of the 90s, where they were at the midway point. I'd like to see that. I would assume like there was a lot of momentum at the beginning, like the Bruins, but like I'm asking the question, did the Bruins have the best first half of the season in the 100+ history of the National Hockey League? Maybe. And man, like Bruno, sometimes like stats don't get enough attention. That goal differential stat, that is crazy. That is crazy. Think of if a guy had double as many goals as the guy in second, or like any stat, like a goalie had whatever much greater of a save percentage, like double the goal differential. Like it'd be fun to go through their schedule, see how much they're shit kicking teams. I know they won 7-1 last night against the Ducks, but fuck, man, like this is something, it's unprecedented. And people say that all the time about how things are like historically good and how like it's unbelievable. No, this is unbelievable what the Bruins are doing right now.
But after pumping the Bruins tires, talking about how great they've been, I should also mention the Leafs are a perfect 4-0 against the Bruins over their last 4 games against Boston.
Slide it in there, eh? How many are in Boston?
4-0 against the Bruins over the last 4.
Do you know how many of them are in Boston?
I'd have to double check that. I think it's been 2-2. I could be wrong, but
I remember beating them in Boston. Like one of them, I was at a wedding, like watching on my phone, and we won in Boston. But what I'd like to see, I haven't really checked the schedule. I'd like to see you next time we're in Boston. Maybe we can be that team to get the 2 points from the Bees at home.
I'm looking at the Leafs schedule right now. They play Boston. It's coming up, man.
That's got to be
on Saturday. This Saturday, they're in Boston.
There you go, man. Maybe I did see it.
Let's go.
Maybe I did see it and it was in my brain. I didn't know it, but okay, let's do it.
Dare I say the game of the season so far in the NHL?
Make a statement. Just shit kick the Bruins at the Gardens. Ooh.
That is a big time game. Halfway point of the season. 2 of the top 3 teams in the league.
But even for Boston, like if you put it in perspective, it's getting to a point for them, or it is at a point for them where it's really hard for them to get up for games because like who cares? But I mean,
this one they'll get up for.
Yeah, this one they'll get. We all know what's going to happen. But Saturday night at home against the team everyone loves to hate. So yeah, they'll be ready. They'll be ready.
Wouldn't it be awesome if the Leafs handed the Bruins their first home regulation loss of the season?
What gets more media explosion in our favorite city? Would it be the Bruins beating the Leafs and like the same old story headline, this team can't be beat, we can't beat this team, or what will be generated as far as excitement goes if we go in and beat the Bruins?
It would definitely be the Bruins beating the Leafs, and it's the same old story.
It's always negativity.
Get more play.
Negativity works in Toronto.
Yeah, negativity sells in Toronto. Trust me on that, everybody.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a wild finish of the season. The Leafs actually played the Bruins 3 more times. They're in Boston twice because they played Boston at Scotiabank in November, beat them 2-1. So they're in Boston January 14th, at home against Boston February 1st, and then April 6th in Boston. So some big games, but again, it's probably not going to matter because the Leafs need a miracle to actually catch this team at this point because there's really just not enough time left. And it's going to be Leafs Tampa in the first round. So buckle up, everybody. Yeah. The Leafs are going to face the Tampa Bay Lightning, the team that has made it to the last 3 Stanley Cups in the first round once again. Good times.
And is that matchup I referred to earlier, the Toronto versus Buffalo, Tampa versus Boston? I'm going to just throw it out there that I'm fully aware that God does not love the Toronto Maple Leafs enough to allow that to happen.
Yeah,
so
there's just the hockey gods aren't going to
No
allow that. It's
chance.
going to be Leafs in Tampa again.
No
and
chance.
the haters are going to be ready. It's going to be glorious.
Every time.
All right, Lepore. Moving on now to Connor Bedard.
Connor Bedard. Who's that?
He's an alien because he's doing things that we haven't seen since essentially Connor McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
And the performance that he had at the World Juniors was next level. And I don't want to get into the whole World Juniors conversation because Lepore, I know you're not the biggest fan of the World Juniors. And trust me, I know a lot of people who are not big fans of the World Junior Hockey Championship, believe it or not. As much as people think that Canadians love this tournament, and sure, I like seeing Canada win. It's fun to see the boys lift the trophy first week of January, as they did for the second year in a row. Connor Bedard, okay? This guy had 23 points in 7 games. Only 2 players in World Junior history scored more points in a single tournament. Actually, I should say 3 players. Peter Forsberg, Marcus Naslund, and Raimo Helminen.
Yeah, the Finnish guy. Yeah, like in like the
Yeah, those are the only 3 guys. Okay, so Connor Bedard set every Canadian record: most goals in a single tournament, most points, most goals and points in his World Junior career for a Canadian. Like, this guy's absurd. He returned to the WHL yesterday.
Yep.
And had 6 points.
Yeah. You stole it from me, Bruno. I was going to say it was a 4-goal, 2-assist night, his first game back. So.
Like, it's absurd. Like, what's he up to now on the season? I'm going to go check out his hockey DB page real quick. What he's doing right now for the Regina Pats. There it is. 70 points in 29 games this season. So he's going to go first overall in the draft. And there's been some talk on Twitter, specifically about the Montreal Canadiens. This popped up over the last 24 to 48 hours. If you were the Habs, and we could apply this to any team that's, rebuilding and has some really good young players and some good draft capital, would you trade Cole Caulfield, if I could say his name correctly? Would you trade Cole Caulfield and 2 first-round picks for Connor Bedard?
Yeah. Before I get started, Bruno, I'm going to point something out. So you mentioned the guys who had the best World Junior tournaments of all time. Gretzky's point total from when he was 16 years old is on that list. So I'll make the point that Wayne put up those numbers as a 16-year-old.
Yeah, that's absurd.
And then at 17 was playing in the WHA with men. So
no
one's Wayne.
Yeah, Gretzky was 16 and Bedard, I should have mentioned, was 17. Whereas all those guys above him on the list, Forsberg, Naslund, Helminen, they were all 19. So yeah, what Bedard and what Gretzky did as a 16-year-old is just absolutely absurd.
Yeah. So as far as this trade goes, I think it's a good discussion. Like, I really and truly do, because I would see arguments for both sides. So if you were a management group, okay, the first question you have to ask yourself, because there's moving parts here, okay? But the first question you have to ask yourself is, what is Connor Bedard? What will Connor Bedard be in the National Hockey League? Okay. And I was thinking about the other day, people are comparing him to certain players. Like, you feel like, oh, like Matthews, because he's got a great shot. It sounds kind of weird, but let's say he's Matthews. It's almost kind of like a bust. Like, based on what he's doing in junior hockey. I'm not saying, you'd be crazy disappointed to get him, but no, my expectation is like to dominate the league, break records, that type stuff. So you have to ask yourself, okay, what will Connor Bedard be? We'll ask you this, Bruno. The briefcase of $1 million, you get this question right. Will Connor Bedard have a better NHL career than Connor McDavid?
If I had to decide on that right now, which you're obviously putting me on the spot, I'm going to say no.
I was going to say, if the Toronto Maple Leafs could draft 18-year-old Connor Bedard or 18-year-old Connor McDavid, who would you want? You could say McDavid.
I'm taking McDavid, and I'm basing that solely on like his explosiveness as a skater.
Yeah.
And just how much faster and more dynamic he appears. Whereas Bedard, as great as his shot is, as dynamic as he is, I don't think he has that same level of explosiveness as McDavid.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the first question you have to ask yourself. So, like, what will this guy be? And then there comes, Caulfield. Well, Caulfield's not signed. So he's coming out of his entry-level deal. He's going to get paid. Okay. what's he going to get paid? What's this guy going to command? Right? Is it going to fit value? Because even some star players, like, who knows what this guy and his agent want, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying I think Cole Caulfield is asking for the stars, but it's going to be a lot of money. The guy deserves. He's a hell of a player. And then the 2 other picks. So you really have to wait and see what those picks are. Like, you're not going to, I mean, obviously not going to trade those picks before you know who's got first overall. And the team who traded it would want to know what pick you have. But let's just assume Montreal is a top 5 pick, right? Like, they'll be, you know, say even at best or worst, however you want to put it, what, like 6th or 7th? Like, they're going to be at the bottom. They're going to be full on a team that can win the lottery. And then they have Florida's pick. I think that is a big aspect here, because what does that Florida pick end up being? Because, like, some people are saying, for example, let's say you have like the 5th and the 10th, or like the 4th and the 9th, or something like that. And this is like, you mentioned, you made that joke about how I feel about the World Juniors. This is kind of attached to why the World Juniors drive me nuts, because people look at like a 9th overall pick and like, oh my God, that's an amazing pick. And they'll name 2 or 3 guys who were picked there over the last who knows how long. Like, look who you're giving up or what you're giving up. But as far as the stats goes, that 9th overall pick is not that valuable in terms of what you're going to get. Okay. Like, I bring it up all the time. And again, attached to the World Juniors. Not, you love your stats, Bruno. This is one I love. The NHL draft. Okay. The NHL draft. Every year they put out that grid of players, say from 5 years ago to 15 years ago, players selected in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds. And what percentage of those players have played X amount of games in the NHL. Okay. First round picks, 55% of first round picks end up being full-time NHL players. I think the number they usually use is like 250 games in the NHL.
That's wild.
So you have a 50-50 shot of being a National Hockey League player if you're drafted in the first round, which is crazy. But what I've always wanted to dig up, or what I've always wanted to see, so it's 55%. What if you remove the first 5 picks? Because the first 5 are like the blue chips.
Oh, it probably drops off significantly.
Yeah, for sure it does. So then even say at the 9th pick, your 9th, 10th pick, you're probably getting to like the 50-50 shot of an NHLer. It's probably where you're getting. So that pick to me is not really part of it, because if you can get Bedard, you got to do it. But then people would come back and say, well, you're giving that a top 5 pick and Bedard and Caulfield. Sorry. What I say to that is, I think people forget in these circumstances, they look at the volume of a deal and what one team is trading, and oh, they traded too much. It's a cap league. It does, you get better value from having the single best player, in my opinion. And I'll throw this out there. And this example I gave to someone the other day, and maybe this is a bigger debate than I think it is. Okay. If the Oilers called and said, Connor McDavid for Marner and Nylander, would you do it?
For McDavid?
For McDavid.
Man.
They're signed. They're all signed.
That's tough. God, I know I might sound crazy and people think, oh, you're a Homer Leafs fan, but Marner and Nylander for McDavid, as good as I think McDavid is, God, I probably don't do that.
You don't do it. Okay. And I'm not saying I 100% do it.
Yeah.
But
you think about it.
I think about it. And the reason why I think about it is because, yeah, in terms of like people say, oh, the value, like, no, 2 players is better than 1. But again, my point about the cap is, let's say all their salaries are the same, or like Nylander's going to get a little bit of raise. Let's say Marner and Nylander are combined 20 million. Okay. McDavid's 12.5. So you get McDavid and 7.5 million of cap space is what you're getting, like in that deal. And again, it's a cap league. You can fill that cap space, right? And again, that's not me saying I would 100% do it, but I think I'm hearing both sides of the argument here, and I get both sides of the argument. But I think the people who are saying like immediately no, that Montreal should not do that, I think it's worth thinking about. I really do. And the reason why I use Nylander and Marner as examples are, okay, Caulfield and like 4th or 5th overall or something is kind of like an equivalent to that. So like 2 big pieces for it. And like I said, throw in that other first round pick, and yes, it could end up being something, but the mathematical odds are against it. Right. So I'll ask you, Bruno, if you're the Montreal Canadiens, what do you trade for Connor Bedard?
Personally, I would probably do it.
Yes,
And the reason I
Bruno.
turned down the Marner and Nylander deal, and that's really tough because the more I think about it, I almost feel like I would pull the trigger on a Marner and Nylander for Connor McDavid, just based on the salary and how you said how, you have McDavid's 12.5 million, although McDavid's going to make like 15 million on his next deal.
Yeah, but
and
so
then you have
Marner and Nylander are going to go up too. So
exactly
it's the same thing.
And then you have the extra cap space, so you would have McDavid and whoever versus Marner and Nylander. It's almost like you kind of just almost have to blindly take McDavid every time. Although Marner and Nylander are fantastic players, so I'm still going to say that I wouldn't make that trade. But when it comes to the Habs, as much as I like Cole Caulfield, and I'll go over some of his numbers, over his last 82 games played, he has 45 goals.
Yeah, one of the best in the league, yeah.
He's 15th in the NHL since January 1st, 2022. So he's played 82 games in that stretch. Other guys have played like 90 games, 90 plus games. Like Caulfield has been one of the best goal scorers in the league over the last 82 games. But saying that, and I know it might sound crazy, I almost feel like it's not enough for Connor Bedard, because if I think,
I like it, Bruno. I like it.
If this guy is going to become some version of McDavid, let's say he's like 85% of Connor McDavid, 90% of Connor McDavid.
So he's still winning the Art Ross.
Yeah. So year. Like let's say you're getting a top 5 player in the world. I don't know, man. Like as good as Caulfield is, Caulfield and 2 first-round picks, I would even probably have to throw in like another player. Like I'd probably have to throw in, and this probably doesn't even get it done, but like Kirby Dach, who was a third overall pick, and he's having a solid season right now. Like you're going to have to throw in somebody like that as well, just because, as you said, Lepore, like if you're not getting a top 5 pick in the draft, and I know one of those would be a top 5 pick, but if one of them is like the 10th or the 11th pick, like that's just not the same.
Who cares? And then again, you're getting Bedard. Like that's the thing. So you're not going to, it ended up being whatever. You're not going to worry about that in 5 years.
Yeah. Like, so I would have, I honestly think that it's probably not enough for whoever lands that top pick to consider. And it's just as simple as that. As good as I think Cole Caulfield is, and I think he's going to have a great career, and he's probably going to be a 40-goal scorer, 30 to 40 goal scorer, let's say. Scoring 40 goals is a lot tougher than I think a lot of people realize. It still honestly probably isn't enough for a guy who could be the next Connor McDavid.
Yeah, but it's like your point though, Bruno, and like this is where the thinking comes in and evaluating this player. Like we talked about his skating. I mean, I hate to be that guy to be like, what he is away from the puck, but it has to be evaluated. But you made the point like, a top 5 player in the league. No, he's a bust if he's the 4th or 5th best player in the league. If he's like anything, I'd say he's not as good as McDavid, but like he's like the 1B.
How about if he's like Mitch Marner?
That's where you'd put his, like, that's your expectation.
No, I'm saying like, is he a bust? If he becomes Mitch Marner.
He's a bust. He's a bust. He's a bust if he's Marner. Think of it this way. We were semi-surprised that Marner got named an All-Star. Like that's a bust. Back-to-back first team All-Star in his position, which is what really matters, but nowhere ever really close to a Hart Trophy, an Art Ross. So yeah, that's a bust if he's Marner. So like that's where the evaluation has to come in. What do you think this kid will be? Because I think if it's like slam dunk 5 to 7 years from now, this guy is the face of the league and dominating the league. Again, I'm not saying 100% you do it, but that's where the conversation has to start as to whether we evaluate this. And man, like, so I mean, I know the answer, and like people comment down below. Would you do that deal? I guess this is a good way to look at it. Would the Montreal Canadiens trade, say, 4th or 5th overall, 10th overall, and Cole Caulfield for an 18-year-old Connor McDavid? Like when I hear it like that, I'd be like, yeah, done. I would do it in a heartbeat. But again, there's the question mark, and that's why it's fun, and it'll be awesome to check in on this conversation in a few years. But let's get juicy here, Bruno. Not what the ceiling is of Connor Bedard, or what his expectations are. What do you think he's going to be? Like from what you've seen, like what do you think he's going to end up being? Do you see him being like hands down the best player in the league? Do you see him being a super elite player, just like a really good player?
No, I think he's going to be close to Connor McDavid. Like, I really do. Yeah. I think he's going to change a franchise immediately. I said this off the top of this segment. I don't think he's going to be as good as Connor McDavid, because Connor McDavid is the fastest, most explosive, most dynamic player I think we've ever seen with the puck on his stick.
Yeah.
Like, it is absurd what this guy does at top speeds. And I don't think Bedard is at that level, but just because he's not that great of a skater doesn't mean that he can't be a top 2 or 3 player in the world. Like, his shot, his hockey sense, his playmaking, like, he is unbelievable. Like, I think he's going to be a top 5 player in the league. Like, I really do.
Yeah, I think that's like that's like bottom expectation, I would say.
And you look at, for example, like Austin Matthews. Like, I think we would all agree that Austin Matthews is a top 5 player in the league. Like, do you think he's going to be better than Austin Matthews, Connor Bedard?
Again, I think he's a bust. I would say he's a bust if he's Matthews.
So you think, like, slam dunk this guy as of right now, based on all the hype and what you've seen, that he's probably going to be better than Matthews?
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm saying based on how this kid's being pumped, what I see, I'm looking forward to seeing what this kid is, because I'll be honest, I'm not quite sure. Because what I go back and forth with is, like, you made the McDavid comparison of his speed, his skating. And McDavid, I don't want to say like it gets underappreciated, but McDavid's an incredible passer. Okay. So McDavid kind of checks all the boxes. This kid does not. Okay. What I saw from him in the World Juniors anyway is that incredible shot, almost like a modern Mike Bossy on steroids, just like ability to score goals, right? So I see that, and then I'm like, is that going to translate into the NHL? Whereas you see McDavid, like, hey, skating, puck handling, all that stuff, his edge work, that's going to, we all knew that was going to translate. But I think with Bedard's style, it's fair for people to question. But then where I kind of argue against myself, and now I'm pumping Bedard in a positive way, is I coach minor hockey, and I'm not an expert, but I'm around a lot of like camps and high level kids and that stuff. And his style of play, I almost think, is where hockey is going, in the way of like, it's going to be a lot more individual. It's going to be a lot more about shooting. Whereas McDavid, and now I'm going to go all geek now. So from a young age, McDavid went through a training program called Power Edge Pro. They call it PEP. And everyone's seen it. You go on YouTube, and he's going through these apparatuses, putting the puck underneath, jumping over them, whatever. And when you see him, even as a teenager, doing these drills, you're like, yeah, that's McDavid. Like, that's how he moves. That's how he plays. And they've been pumping this system through minor hockey. So a lot of kids have been going through it in camps and hockey schools and all that. So it's breeding a certain type of player that kind of resembles what McDavid looks like when he's out there. But what I'm seeing now is the Bedard thing. It's about individual, like, literally deking out everyone and putting a bar down. Like, that's what it is. And I mean, the grandpas like me kind of roll our eyes when we see things like the Michigan, but you're going to see more stuff like that. Like, the creativity is going to be through the wall, and hockey is going to look completely different. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to be, because will he be as good as McDavid? Because that's where hockey is going to go. Or will he not be? I hate to say because of his deficiencies, but because of those things that we can see, he's not A+ at that, right? Or his style may not translate to the National Hockey League like some people are hoping for, based on his like numbers projections, like minor hockey or junior hockey numbers to the NHL. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to the story, because we're going to see a great player either way. And it's just going to be a debate over the ceiling. And I hate to go this route, but I always like look back and like, I'm not the biggest fan of LeBron James, but I always feel kind of sorry for him in the way that he came into the NBA, and like the expectation was to be like the greatest basketball player of all time. And even if people put him like top 5, it's like negative. It's like, hey guys, like, relax, right? Even if he is he's not Jordan. Okay, well, if your one comeback is he's not Jordan, he's pretty fucking amazing, right?
Yeah, he's pretty damn close. If you don't think he's the GOAT, he's either number 2 or number 3.
Exactly. So are we going to do that with Bedard?
It's possible based on the hype.
Yeah, if he comes
based off the World Juniors he just had as a 17-year-old, it's possible.
Exactly. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be, and I'm rooting for the kid. He's a BC boy like me. He could end up in a good market. We'll have that conversation another time, but what market we hope he ends up in. But It's going to be awesome, man. I'll throw this out there. So this will be fun for comments. So Arizona wins the draft lottery. Okay. Arizona wins the draft lottery. The Toronto Maple Leafs sign Austin Matthews to an 8-year extension. Austin Matthews for Connor Bedard, who says no. Assigned Austin Matthews.
The only reason, oh God, that's really, if the Leafs, because I think the Leafs are really close to actually being like a legitimate, like I think they could win a cup this year, next year, as long as these guys are all here.
In come the comments, Bruno.
It's tough, man, because they're ready to win a cup now. And if you exchange Matthews for Bedard, like they don't have the same 200-foot game, it's going to take a little bit of time for him to mature. Even though I think he's going to be great immediately, is he going to have the same impact as Matthews is having right now as a 25-year-old? Probably not.
In the short term. Yeah. That's
right. So for the short term, the Leafs would probably take a little bit of a step back. But man, to have that guy in the fold for the next decade, that's enticing, man. I would love to hear the comments down below.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are commenting, oh, Arizona would not do that. The reason why, and maybe Matthews plus whatever, but at the same time, and, again, comment down below what you think. There is that part of me that think Arizona would have a hard time refusing that deal, or they would at least seriously consider it because of the PR that would come with it. Of getting the best American player, the kid from Arizona. Everyone shits on the Coyotes. He came home. That might be too enticing, right? And let's face it, really, it's like if they end up with Austin Matthews, no one would be like, oh, what a bunch of fucking idiots. Well, no, they ended up with Austin Matthews. So I think it's a fun conversation,
man.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, but I'm just, again, it's fun to.
It's so fun to think about these things. Yeah, let us know. Like, no matter what team you're a fan of, whether it's the Leafs, the Habs, the Oilers, would you trade your best young player and multiple first-round draft picks for Connor Bedard, or do you think it's just simply not enough for Connor Bedard? If you think this guy is going to be the face of the NHL in 6 or 7 years, let us know down below. Lepore, anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
Well, you made me pretty nervous, Bruno. We got the Bruins coming up on the schedule. So Saturday nights, I always have that little bit of anxiety before a Leaf game. So it's going to be pumped up coming up, but it's why we're fans, right? Can't wait. And that maybe next time we're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs ending this home winning streak that the Bruins have, and that'll be fun.
I think it's going to happen, man. I'm calling it right now.
You know what I'm interested in?
Bruins, Saturday night in Boston. They are going to hand the Bruins their first regulation loss of the season at home. And I'm just going to quickly check the Bruins schedule because, yes, they do play at home against Seattle on Thursday. So, I mean, it could happen then. Seattle's been a sneaky, really good team.
Yeah, sneaky team. Yeah, see that stat? Like how many games they've won while like they beat Ottawa, was it 8-4 the other night? They've won, I don't know how many games, allowing 4 or more goals. Just like they're fun to watch. But what I'm really interested to see from that Bruins game is, so here are the Bruins, undefeated in reg at home, like halfway through the season, against the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, as all bettors know, you get no value with the Leafs. Like, I think like last night, the Leafs were like minus 200 on a back-to-back, right? You get no value with the Leafs. What's the line going to be in that game? Like, my question is, are the Leafs favored in that game?
You're going to have to hammer the Leafs because the Bruins are going to be like, I would say at least like a minus 140 favorite.
Oh, yeah. Now that it came out of my mouth, like, yeah, the Leafs won't be favored, but will it be like closer than people might think it would be?
The Leafs will be like a plus 120 underdog, something like that. I think it'll be closer than people think. Like, Boston won't be a heavy favorite.
No.
But they'll be like, they'll be minus 140 in somewhere in that range. That's kind of my gut on that.
Okay, we'll check in on that.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be the game of the... Like, I think right now it's the game of the year in the NHL. Yeah. Leafs, Bruins, the rivalry, how both teams are two of the top 3 teams in the league. Like, they're both playing fantastic hockey. Man, it's going to be all the storylines. It's just going to be awesome on Saturday night, man. I can't wait.
Awesome.
All right. That is going to do it, everybody, for episode 88 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP. Once again, if you're a new listener or a longtime listener and you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube, it would be a big time help if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So we will be buckled in for Leafs Bruins on Saturday night, and we will talk to you guys in about a week from now. But until then, enjoy the hockey, go Leafs go, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.